Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1265 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's an interesting episode with Adrienne. She's 29 years old, the mom to a little boy, and she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes about 19 weeks into her pregnancy with him back in June of 2022. Since then, she's gotten a bipolar diagnosis, which she doesn't particularly agree with. You're going to hear our entire conversation, and then after that, another conversation I had with her later. So she finished recording with me and then thought of other things that she wanted to say, and I let her come back on to complete her record. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget, if you use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox, you'll get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. And if you go to cozyearth.com and use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout, you're going to save 30% off of your entire order. And if you'd like to help with type 1 diabetes research and you're a U.S. resident who is a type 1 or the caregiver of a type 1, all you have to do is go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox, join the registry, and complete the survey. This should take you about 10 minutes. Your answers are going to help. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Hungryroot, the easiest way to eat healthy. Hungryroot.com/juicebox. Today's podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and at touchedbytype1.org. If you're looking for an organization who's helping people with type 1 diabetes, you're looking for Touched by Type 1. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform.
Hey, my name is Adrienne. I'm 29 years old, a mom to a little boy who is almost a year and a half, and I was diagnosed type 1 at 19 weeks pregnant with him in June of 2022.
Woo, let's go. Hold on a second. Look at you starting hot. So in 2022, you're pregnant.
I am. He's my first and only child.
Okay.
And I was actually supposed to be going into the OB's office to have the gender reveal ultrasound. But I walked in and they had mistakenly booked me for a regular doctor's appointment. And my doctor was not on staff that day. He was at the hospital delivering. And so they asked me if I wanted to see someone else that was on the team that day. And I was kind of irritated by it, but I was like, sure, might as well. So I went in and saw a nurse practitioner who was great, but standard procedure for any doctor's appointment there at the OB is to do a urine sample before you're seen. Mm-hmm. So a nurse came in and she's like, we saw something that kind of flagged us in your urine. We want to check your sugar. So she did a finger poke and I came back like 391, I think it was. And I could see she was concerned. So she poked again and she's like, okay, we're just, going to check to be safe. And my second prick was 457. So she left and unfamiliar face poked back in. And it was the nurse practitioner who never bothered to introduce herself. She said, what did you have for lunch today? Those were her first words to me. So I thought, well, way to break the ice. And sheepishly admitted that I'd given into a pregnancy craving for Taco Bell. So that was great. But she said that her blood sugar, had she eaten Taco Bell, probably wouldn't have been over 120. And so that was her way of telling me that I was diabetic. She said that they didn't think it was gestational. It was too soon into my pregnancy for that to have developed, was her gut instinct. But they were going to send me home over the weekend to check before and after meals, that type of thing. So I basically just broke down crying there in the office, asked 0 questions, and left there with no idea what I was doing. But they had me monitor over the weekend and things kind of just rolled from there. And thankfully, my partner works in pharmacy, so he was able to bring home all of the supplies I needed that same day. I was able to kind of push things through pretty quickly. So that's how the story started.
And long story short, your baby's name is Chalupa. Is that correct?
Right. That's exactly right. No, his name is Lucas.
Oh. Does anybody know what chalupa means? Like, is that a real word or is that like a word that like Taco Bell made up?
Right. That's a good question.
All right, I'll figure that out while you're telling me about everything that happened. No, it's a real food. Several specialty dishes of South Central Mexico. Okay. Thank you. I thought maybe it was a marketing word. You said that's how she told me I had diabetes. She didn't say to you, you have diabetes. She just said, that's not what my blood sugar would do. And I'm super healthy.
That's how she let off, was that, that's not how her sugar would have responded. But she said, I think you are type 1 diabetic. Unfortunately, this is not something that goes away. I had heard of gestational diabetes. I wasn't super familiar with it. And I, just kind of, I guess, asked again. That was my only question was, are you sure this is not gestational? It's not going to go away when he's born. And she said, no. And at that point, I pretty much just couldn't pull myself together enough to even ask her any questions. And she just apologized for having to break this news to someone that, she had never even met before. She was super sweet, but that was a shock. Nobody in my family has type 1, no autoimmune that we're aware of. I do have a type 2 grandfather, so, familiar with that side of it, but type 1 was pretty new to me.
No autoimmune at all. RA, celiac.
My grandmother had, on my dad's side, a gluten intolerance, which she says is going away. So, I don't.
How old is she?
She just turned 80.
My friend Mike, he's gone now, but his grandmother, when we were growing up, in the last 10 years of her life, she ate pound cake and smoked cigarettes.
Wow, what a way to live!
She just did not eat food anymore. She'd get up in the morning, have a piece of pound cake, smoke a cigarette. And that's just what she did all day long. I was just wondering if maybe she stopped eating gluten, didn't realize it. The gluten thing's going away.
Right. Well, she did avoid it for some time, and now she says she can have little bits and not be bothered by it. So, good for her.
They
but
say if you stay alive long enough.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. But I have your notes here in front of me, so it's a little unfair. But do you have anything else going on besides the type 1?
Post type 1 diagnosis, I actually also received a bipolar II diagnosis. This was last August, and I am still not 100% settled into that. A lot of things about it do make sense with, my history, but I haven't fully embraced that, I guess, quite yet. I'm still navigating treatment and trying to find something that alleviates symptoms. But yeah, we're still in the throes of that. So
yeah, I asked because, and if you listen to the podcast, you've heard me say this now, when I started saying to people, is there any other autoimmune in your family? Eventually people, they rattle things off like you just did it. You're like, I didn't ask about type 2, but you said, if somebody has type 2. A lot of people would go, and I have my uncle's bipolar. They were just thinking of things that were, wrong with people. And then they, in their family, and they would blurt them out. And my God, the 20th time somebody said my uncle's bipolar, I was like, what the hell is going on? And I always wonder if it's not an inflammation issue, autoimmune inflammation, that kind of mix. I've obviously barely got out of high school, so I don't know. But it's, anecdotally, a lot of people say bipolar to me. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And was that your whole life? Did you, you said there were signs. What were the signs growing up? I'd like to introduce you to your partner in eating healthy, Hungryroot, the easiest way to eat healthy. Hungryroot has the best fruits, vegetables, premium meats, kids' snacks, soups and stews, baked goods, and so much more. Hungryroot.com/juicebox. You can save hours of planning, shopping, and cooking by letting Hungryroot deliver food you'll love right to your door. And Hungryroot is here to support your fueling goals. Do you need more vegetables, less sodium? Hungryroot can make that happen. If you're ready to dig in, use my link, hungryroot.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion, Jalen.
I was going straight into high school, so it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
Unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It it felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You know, you can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. Started embracing more, you know, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox to hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community.
I guess early to mid-teens, I started having issues with depression and anxiety. So I've been treated for that since I was in my teens. But with Bipolar II, there are more stretches spent in depressive periods than there are in hypomania. So the difference between type 2 or Bipolar 2 and 1, you don't quite reach the full heights of mania. So you're maybe irritable or anxious, restless type of thing, but you're not just totally off the rails experiencing things that Bipolar 1 usually would. And again, it's more time spent in depressive episodes. But, you know, you live your life like everything is revolving around the problems that you're having. And I have found just some selfish things, I guess, about myself and the way I've lived in the past and just kind of, you know, disregarded what might be going on with the people close to me when I myself am dealing with something. Everything else kind of just shuts off, which is embarrassing to even talk about. And I'm worried that this is just going to sound totally scattered because this is pretty new to me. Like I said, I'm still not even fully convinced that that's what's going on.
Okay.
There are things about the diagnosis that, like I said, makes sense just about my personality and the way that I have lived, but I haven't found a treatment yet that is super helpful. So I'm not fully convinced that that's what's going on. But they said that something like Bipolar 2 could be triggered by the type 1 diagnosis, you know, being a traumatic event, could also have been pregnancy. I do really notice, though, that when my blood sugar is on a roller coaster, my mental state follows. So
okay.
I think that's pretty normal for people with, you know, high sugars to have, you know, irritability or, you know, just to not be themselves. So it's hard for me to kind of differentiate what may actually be bipolar versus just, you know, the things that go along with type 1.
Yeah, I don't have bipolar and my personality ebbs and flows with my daughter's blood sugar. So
that's,
you know,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
Long depressive episodes. What does that look like day to day?
Well, so this is actually another interesting element. They diagnosed me as rapid cycling bipolar 2. So I can swing from, you know, it seems like 1 minute to the next, but I'll have a lot of ups and downs within a day. I think that the actual guidelines for diagnosing bipolar 2 rapid cycling would be like four or five depressive episodes in a few months, which to me doesn't seem
that rapid.
No, not at all. Because I'm sitting over here thinking I'm swinging, you know, one side of the pendulum to the other multiple times a day. So it just is.
Adrienne, what's that look like? Is it like, oh my God, the world's ending, everything is terrible, let's go climb Mount Everest, I just want to die, you guys want to try? Like, is it like, sorry, I don't know, I just jumped to the like, but like, is it like that? Is it just like up, down, up, down, up, down, like big swings like that?
It is big swings. I can go from like, I'm trying to think of just an example here. I'll wake up in a completely awful mood. You know, usually it's a crying baby that jolts you out of bed. So there's that. It's a way to start the day. But, you know, I'll walk into, you know, take him out of the crib and we can have a restart, be totally snuggly and, you know, just head downstairs and something can set me off. It can be, you know, the dog tripping us up as we go down the stairs or just something that, you know, didn't get put away from the night before. And it just totally sends me into this spiral of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get anything done today. Like, look at all this stuff that's got to, you know, happen around me. And I'm working full time from home while also caring for the toddler. And, you know, most of the household stuff kind of defaults to me. I know you've had that experience in your life, but it's just a constant feeling, I guess, of being buried under the things that you see need to be done. When something good happens in your life, it, you know, it can really increase or better your mood, but then the slightest thing can really tip you off. And I feel terrible for my family because I know that I can be difficult to live with. I feel like my partner walks on eggshells oftentimes when he comes home because he doesn't know what version of me he's going to get. But I keep telling myself that this is just a crazy period of life. Lots of new things going on with the baby and the new diagnosis. Type 1, I'm still navigating that. There were no pre-pregnancy settings to default back to, and my insulin needs are constantly changing still.
Hey,
and
Adrienne, can I ask a question here? Have you had your thyroid checked?
So because of you, I had actually requested some more in-depth thyroid panels pretty shortly after I got diagnosed type 1. And they ran another panel just last week, actually. So I just got those results back and everything looks pretty normal. My TSH is like right on the border of low, like the low end of the scale. And I know the scale is different. Give me 1 second here.
By the way, you should see my notes in front of me. 29, bipolar, ? Diagnosed during pregnancy, thyroid, ? Bleep.
Jeez. Oh gosh. Okay.
And I had to make the note, Adrienne, because I got really panicked that Rob would take out the whole sentence. And I really just wanted the word out, not the whole sentence.
That is so funny. No, you're fine.
Is chalupa real? That's one of my other notes. I don't know why you people listen to this.
I do. I can't remember. Yesterday I was listening to, it was an older episode, and God, I was in tears, Scott. You had me cracking up.
No,
I'm going to have to go.
Hilarious. Yeah. No.
You really are. No. I got to say, too, I found the podcast my first night in the hospital. I spent 3 nights in the hospital after I was diagnosed. And I pretty much went without any good information straight from the doctors because I was getting so much conflicting information. I went to Reddit, which I know you have mixed feelings on.
No. Let's be clear, because I love Reddit. I just don't go there. That's okay. All. The people on Reddit are very nice to me. I love you all. Don't let this lady speak for me. I don't say anything bad about you. Do not get me in trouble on Reddit, Adrienne. What are you doing?
I'm so sorry. No. I thought maybe I had heard once that you just weren't sure what the platform was or how.
I don't want to say. There was one time. No, we won't talk about that. Anyway, the people on Reddit are really kind, and they always are telling people about the podcast. I'm being genuine and sincere. Yeah.
They are absolutely wonderful. So that I was actually referred twice to the podcast in my first post, and I had cross-posted my initial inquiry into a few different subreddits, but Heidi's Pottery and Yo119, they both said you have to listen to the Pro Tip series. And so the first episode I heard was newly diagnosed or starting over. So
did that make you upset?
It is. It's not in a bad way.
I don't want you to yell at me. No, I'm just kidding. No. Actually, Adrienne, it would be great for the podcast if you had a big mood swing while we were recording, but I don't.
Oh, well, you're in for a treat. So
these two people reached out and they found you. That's amazing.
Yeah, they responded to my post, and everybody just had the best words of encouragement. And it was a lot of, hey, sorry your invite to this crappy club arrived, but it is a great community, and they could not sing your praises highly enough on there. Just was so grateful that they pointed me your direction, because honestly, like I said, with the mixed info I was getting at diagnosis, your podcast was such a pillar of consistency and solid info that I could tell was really impacting people just from the Facebook group. I was in that really quickly as well. Mm-hmm. The community there is just unmatched. So grateful for everything you're doing.
Who am I thanking? Yo MTV Raps and Heidi's song? What am I doing?
Heidi's Pottery.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Heidi's Pottery.
And Yo119.
Yo119. I genuinely appreciate how kind you guys are and that you were sharing. I mean, look what you did for Adrienne. It's really amazing. I would have never found you that way,
Yeah, it's a big world out there for sure, but it's just super grateful that they happened to see that post and
come along.
Ended up listening to you. Yeah.
Obviously, you're making the post because you need help. And I guess let's dig backwards a little bit. You came out of the hospital with, what was your understanding of diabetes leaving the hospital or even in there?
They mostly were just trying to stabilize my sugars. I wasn't like off the rails. My A1C at diagnosis was only 8.9. And so they thought that it must have been the pregnancy that kicked it off. My A1C wasn't high enough for it to have been something before that. And so they sent me straight to like labor and delivery. And so that's where I was being treated. They seemed to have, and I would never be able to tell the difference, obviously, at that point, whether they knew much about type 1 or not. They seemed to. They got my sugars down. I, was vaguely briefed on how I would be handling things with both a short and long acting insulin when I left.
Mm-hmm.
I never gave myself an injection at the hospital. They did it each time. And then the only education I really got was my OB coming in to check on me, my actual doctor, in the middle of the night. He came in at like 2 a.m. I had just fallen asleep not that long before. He was talking about my lifespan and all the complications that were going to happen. It woke me out of a dead sleep to tell me these things. And so that was the impression I had of type 1 when I left the hospital. It was like this doom and gloom thing. He did say, there's some technology now that helps with management, but basically this is where you're headed. That was really awful. And then I was referred to an endo who works within the hospital system there. And she, okay, I gotta rewind a little bit. So when I found your podcast, I started hearing all this about Dexcom and Omnipod. Those were the two things that stuck in my brain. And so then I left there really urging my teams to help me get this technology. And I was set up with a virtual visit with the diabetes educator a couple of days after I was released from the hospital. When we logged on, she said, I was really hoping you'd be here in person because I wanted to set you up with a Dexcom. And I just about came out of my skin. I was like, I will be there in 15 minutes. Please let me come in. Don't.
Yeah, the guy on the phone said that word. Right? You're like, I heard the guy on the podcast say that word.
Yes.
Yeah,
I need that. Yeah. And she's I will be there. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll wait for you. And I could not believe it. I figured she was going to reschedule me and, make me wait for this. But so we got that set up. That was great. And then after seeing her, I finally got connected with the endocrinologist. And I asked her pretty much immediately about getting on a pump. And she said, it's too much for you to learn right now. I don't think you can do it. And I was like, lady, listen, I will tell you what I can or can't learn. My main concern now is not killing this baby. Like, they don't even want you to get pregnant as a type 1 unless your A1C is below a certain level. And I went into pregnancy not even knowing that I had this. And so I'm panicking, thinking that I'm going to harm my baby. I just want all of the tools that are available to me. And so I really pushed on the Omnipod, and she was not going to do it. And so I went back to my diabetes educator, and, she had kind of given me the impression that she thought I could handle this information, that I was catching on kind of quickly. And I credit the podcast with that, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
She said, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll put some notes in and, we'll talk to the endo. And that never happened. She didn't put notes in my file, but I had reached out to Insulet with their insurance coverage check.
Mm-hmm.
And they reached out directly to my endo. And before I knew it, I had a prescription on file at Rite Aid for the Omnipod 5. And I was like, where did this even come from? Because my endo never approved it. I never talked to her about it again. All I did was ask about my insurance coverage. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I ended up on the Omnipod 5 within a month of diagnosis. I think I thank Insulet for that because I couldn't get anywhere with my doctor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not uncommon, like, for, what you bumped into there. And that person didn't know you. How much time did they have with you when they said, I don't think you can handle this?
I was in her office for probably 20 minutes, but the only reason for that was because she just kept talking over me. And I left there so frustrated and discouraged. This person she's not hearing my questions or my concerns. Like, there's also the element of you don't even know what to ask because you don't know what information you don't have. But, it seems like she just was looking down on me, I guess, because I didn't know what I was talking about. And it seemed like she just wasn't
How long had you
help.
had diabetes at that point? 8 seconds?
Right. Yeah. A little over a week.
Right. Well, of course you're not going to know. And she's not asking you questions. She's just pontificating.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And I got the typical, 15 carbs to treat a low. I was on a sliding scale for insulin, and they had started me on NPH, which eventually got changed, thankfully, because I didn't have a great experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm just talking circles now.
No, Adrienne, you're doing great. Are you really worried that you're not doing well?
Well, I was mostly worried that the story wouldn't even make sense. I feel like there's so many elements I've just been jumping around.
No, not at all. Don't worry about it. I'm following you perfectly well. Don't worry about that at all. Yeah. Okay. So they get you a pump. Did you get a CGM at the same time or no?
No. So I was I had the Dexcom about 6 days after diagnosis, and then the Omnipod 5 a month after.
Okay.
And after I got the prescription for the Omnipod, they actually had an alert come out for a shortage of Omnipod 5s. And so I was supposed to be going in for my pump training in a couple days. And so I was waiting on, it's like a provider who delivers your prescriptions, I guess. It's Alto Pharmacy. And they were supposed to be delivering the Omnipods. Then I got an alert that they were in short supply. So I spent a long time on the phone with the pharmacy, and this poor gal, she was just so wonderful. I told her, I was like, I'm about to leave town. I'm supposed to get my pump training right before I go. You know, is there any way can I drive and pick these up somewhere? And she's like, well, it looks like there's a pharmacy. This place was 3 hours from my house. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. I drove and I picked them up. That was my first box.
Wow.
Got the training.
My parents picked me up to adopt me during a tropical storm. They said it was like a hurricane. And I always felt like that meant something, like that they really wanted me. But now I look back as an adult and I'm like, it's probably the only baby they got offered.
Oh, stop. No.
You're like 3 hours then. One way. Oh, what is this pump going to do? It better be special.
Oh, no. I was so glad to be able to even pick it up. I was like, I don't care about the drive, but
yeah.
No, that was great. And I've actually since switched from Omnipod 5 on the Dash now, and I'm looping with Android APS.
Oh, look at you. Did you move to the Dexcom G7 or are you still with G6?
I'm still with G6. But yeah, I just started looping right before Christmas. Christmas Eve actually was my first day on the Dash. So
Did you say you're
been
doing
good so far?
IAPS?
Android APS.
Android, yeah. Who did you set it up yourself?
So I set up the Night Scout through T1 Pal, and then I built AAPS on my own. Yeah.
Good for you. That's excellent.
Yeah. Awesome instructions.
Yeah. No kidding. I let somebody help me, but still. Thank you, Mike.
I wish I did. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I there's a part of me that knows for sure I wouldn't do it right, but it's working astonishingly well for Arden.
That's great.
Really is. So, and she's using it with G7, which is nice too.
How is she liking G7?
It's smaller and easier to swap. I think that's what she knows about it. So It's what she gets. Arden really doesn't dig nuts and bolts into diabetes. Like, she knows how to do it. She knows how to handle, like, I've not seen, she's been in college now for a year and a half. I haven't seen one circumstance come up that she hasn't handled well. Like, really, really good. And
that's outstanding.
Yeah, but she's not one to talk about it a lot. She doesn't want to sit around and talk about diabetes. Even if I come up to her and I'm like, hey, we have to do this because of this. She goes, okay. I'm like, do you understand? She goes, yeah. And I'm like, okay. But it's not dismissive. It's just she's not looking to conversate around it.
That's fair.
Yeah. And it's nothing about me. I don't talk about it either, which is probably weird for people to hear. But I don't find myself talking about diabetes very frequently.
I imagine you spend so much time doing it on the podcast, probably doesn't leak into your personal life.
I'm talked out on it. I'm good. I think I've had enough. I've had enough conversations. I want to make sure this timeline's right. So, how far along are you when you're diagnosed? Tell me again.
19 weeks.
19 weeks. Now, I'm going to do some quick math. That's like 5 months. And correct. You were probably impressed how fast I did that, but don't be.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. It's like 4 months and 3 weeks, but so 5 months. You still have month 6, 7, 8. You still got 4 to go, and you're on a pump pretty quickly, 6 weeks. So you do a pump and a CGM for the last 3 months of your pregnancy. And Where did you get your A1C to during the pregnancy?
So I started at 8.9 at diagnosis. And by the time I gave birth, I was 5.4.
Ew.
Which I don't know if that's actually good or not, because that seems like a huge drop in that amount of time, which I know is not good for you. But my sugars were so much more in control. I was proud of myself. My team was impressed with what they were seeing with the graphs, and I just could not have done that without the podcast. I'll let you say something nice about me in a second, but I was going to say that as much as I don't know the actual ramifications of you bringing it down that quickly, I think for the baby, it's the step I would have thought. I would have said, hey, let's get it down, because we're growing a baby here. Right. Right.
Did you change your diet? Was there any more Taco Bell after that?
No more Taco Bell. Although, so this is kind of another interesting element too. I feel like the type 1 diagnosis really messed with my relationship with food, which I'm sure you hear all the time, but not in the way that I would expect. So I did control myself better during the pregnancy for baby's sake. But holy cow, after he arrived, self-control abilities really just plummeted. So I found that the foods that I was figuring out the boluses for the best were the worst foods for me. Things that I would just try and fail until I finally figured them out. Like I have to know how to bolus for a decent amount of fries, things that I don't want to give up.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm more inclined to eat the things that I know I shouldn't have now that I know that I shouldn't have them, almost like I don't want to be told, that I can't do something. Food was a really big, I don't know. I'm a foodie. I love the experience of eating, and French fries is a terrible example to demonstrate that, but I would miss that, and so it's really important to me to know that I can maintain, a normal sense of.
Well, listen, anybody who's ever bitten into a properly cooked French fry with crispy and salty on the outside and squishy and potatoey in the middle is not going to, that's a good example.
I think so. Probably not as good as a chalupa, but we'll go with it.
Yeah. Did you know, by the way, in 1997, Taco Bell ran a commercial with a Chihuahua named Gidget? And I think
Yo quiero Taco Bell?
Yeah. So say that again. Go ahead.
Yo quiero Taco Bell?
The reason I bring it up is because when I remembered Secreto Taco Bell. And I don't know any Spanish at all. I just wonder how it stuck in my head. Like, how did I get Quidero right, but not the yo? So
yeah,
anyway,
I don't know.
I'm upset with myself over that one. Do you think 97, you know that one? 2007, that's 30 years ago.
Did it run longer than 97, I wonder? Because I definitely remember the Chihuahua.
It's huge on YouTube. Like, legitimately, like, hold on a second. This is the commercial. It's a little Chihuahua. He's like running through the street. And then he sees another Chihuahua. He falls in love. And then what happens? Hold on. It's almost over. Oh, wait. Passes by. Okay. So here's the premise. The Chihuahua is running down the street. There's another Chihuahua, a lady Chihuahua, who's looking at him with love. But he rolls right by her to a guy eating a taco and then says what he says.
My kind of dog.
Well, that's what I'm seeing from you. Is that you would probably give up love for a taco.
I might.
So you ended up getting very good at bolusing for things that you're like, health-wise, I shouldn't be eating this, but hey, look how good I am at bolusing for it.
Well, I think I've gotten better at bolusing for those things. I don't know if I've gotten good at it, but okay. I did figure out there's a sandwich from Panera that I have nailed. Things like that, staples that I crave often. I'm like, I got to figure that out because I don't know if I'll make it without having that in my life. So here we are.
What's the bolus for the sandwich? What do you do?
So I actually have to drag that out. And so I'll tell you, I haven't eaten that Panera sandwich since I started looping. I'm having trouble with the extended carbs and getting those to work right with AAPS, but still working it out. But when I was on Omnipod 5, it was an extended bolus for like 2.5 hours. And I would do about 60% upfront and the other 40% dragged out. My carb ratio is 1-12 currently. I don't know what it was at the time, but
you're in manual at that point with Omnipod 5?
I never stayed in automated mode.
Because you couldn't while you were pregnant, right?
Right. Yeah. It just wasn't tight enough control.
So I was going to say, because you said extended bolus, and I was like, that's going to confuse people. You cannot do an extended bolus in automation with Omnipod 5.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You apologizing. I'm cleaning it up. Don't worry.
You're good at that. Yeah.
So you're like doing a heavy extended bolus on this sandwich. You've got it all figured out. It's working well for you. Do you pre-bolus it?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that, I think postpartum has been a huge hang up for me, the pre-bolus, because if I do pre-bolus, oftentimes I'll get distracted by something else and then totally forget to eat. And then I'm tanking. Or sometimes it's like, oh, shoot, I forgot to pre-bolus and now I know I'm going to skyrocket. So it's, adding that extra amount onto the front end of the bolus and hoping to even it out later.
Are you finding it difficult to be a mom?
I am. Yeah. I love it. I would not trade it for the world. That little boy is just my pride and joy. But yeah, it's been hard. The postpartum period was really rough. And I feel like with the type 1 diagnosis, this sounds selfish, but I feel like I got robbed of a very happy time in my life.
No, of course.
The pregnancy was perfect. I didn't really have morning sickness. I think I got sick twice over the whole pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Most of the downsides that you hear about carrying a child just didn't apply to me. And it should have been a really joyous time in my life, if not for this. And same thing with the first year of his life. Like I said, I had no pre-pregnancy settings to go back to for my pump. Had no idea what my needs would be. I have no idea if I was honeymooning. I'm sure I probably was, but my requirements changed.
Yeah, you might have caught a little bit of a break while you were pregnant with a honeymoon, but still a heavy usage because of the hormones, I imagine. And then you have the baby and you don't need as much, but you don't have any frame of reference for how to go back, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So it's like starting from scratch.
Yeah. Twice in 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
While you're supposed to be celebrating this thing, the baby coming, and instead listen, I'm not a lady, but I've been married to one for a long time. I would imagine that getting really bad news during a time when you're so flooded with hormones is probably extra difficult.
It was bad. I ended up back on antidepressants after having like a total meltdown in my OB's office. And he was like, all right, well, I feel like he kind of wanted to just wash his hands. And he's like, well, we'll get you taken care of and we'll see how this goes after you give birth. But
we're going to get this one high so she stops yelling.
Right. I wasn't yelling. It was just crying.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like devastated. Man. No?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're afraid for your kid, and you're afraid because this, same guy who's now like, okay, well, we'll start you on something. He was the one that came into my hospital room in the middle of the night and was telling me how my life was going to be shorter and I was going to have all these problems down the road.
How much shorter did he tell you? This is ridiculous.
It is. I don't think he gave me an amount. He just basically told me that type 1s are known to have shorter lifespans, especially women. He said, I don't know why that is, because I feel like when I Googled that after, I didn't see anything like that. But
you probably knew one lady that died.
Yeah. Just, aside from that experience, he was the most amazing doctor. I really loved him. So that was really bizarre to me. But
just this one day when he ignored the fact that I was pregnant for the first time, having a baby, super excited, all of a sudden found out I have an incurable disease, and then started thinking about my own health and the baby's health and the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, and all the joy was stripped out of my moment. And then he's like, hey, by the way, you're probably going to die sooner now.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why that didn't go well, Adrienne. It's baffling.
Oh my gosh. And then
what the fuck is wrong with everybody? Let's say you were going to die sooner. Let's just say that that's true for a second. We can't hold on to that information for a little bit. That has to come out today. Unbelievable.
Time and place, my friend.
Yeah. Figure it out. That guy's not married. Or if he was, that lady left him.
He's appears happily married with a couple kids. He has,
I don't know what she's putting up with at home, or what maybe he's got common sense at home that he doesn't have when he's sitting with you. Also, you look young. I know you're not young. I know you're 29, but I know what you look like. You look young. Like, even that you would think would like, I don't know, like garner a little bit of like fatherly care from the guy or something like that. Like, you're going to die sooner. It's a weird place to start, Yeah.
It really is. It is.
Well, what are you going to do?
Exactly. So
I'm sorry. So baby comes flying out. That all goes great. But then besides your insulin needs changing, you get hit with postpartum. How quickly does that happen after the birth, and how long does it stick with you for, and what was it like?
Well, I would say within a couple of weeks, I noticed a big change in myself, and my partner I think he took about a week and a half after the baby came. My boss, it's, funny enough, he is actually type 1 himself, and he was in the car with me the day that I got called in to come to the hospital after I had monitored my sugars, that weekend after the initial doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And so he heard me reading off my numbers to the nurse, and he had no idea what had been going on. And when I hung up the phone, he said, that sounds like blood sugar, and that doesn't sound very good. And I was like, geez, thanks. He's been a great resource for me. But all that to say, this company that I work for is about 8 men, and there's no precedent for what happens when a female employee needs to take maternity leave. And so when he found out I was pregnant, he's like, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I think standard in the US is 12 weeks. And he said, oh, I was, thinking more like 3 weeks. And I'm thinking, okay.
Can you bring the baby to the office right after you have it and keep working, please?
Well, thankfully I work from home. And so they were flexible. They met me at 8 weeks, but even still, I mean, anybody who's had a baby would say that's just not enough time, especially when you're navigating all this new stuff. And I would say within a couple weeks in, to circle back to your question, I started noticing, like I said, a change in myself. It was a really lonely period. When your partner's gone during the day, you're now responsible for caring for this small human. You have no clue what you're doing. You're navigating this new disease. I breastfed and nursing dropped my sugar a lot. And so I was having scary lows. I remember my partner coming home from work and I was just completely out of sorts. I don't remember where the baby was, somewhere safe. He was either in his crib or maybe sleeping in his swing or something like that. But my partner found me just kind of wandering around trying to put on this baby carrier sling thing that I had. And I was not making any sense. He was totally sweaty and shaky and just not, I didn't want to eat anything. But this poor guy,
this poor guy.
he has put up with a lot.
This poor bastard that fell in love with me.
Well, I mean, he didn't know what he was signing up for. He has a son from a previous marriage who just turned 16. And he had not been planning on having any more kids. And so our son, Lucas, was a surprise blessing to us. Yeah.
A surprise blessing. What happened after a wedding?
No.
Did you guys go out to a movie, try to have dinner? Thought it would be safe? What happened?
Right. No, just we're still not married yet. That's down the road. But I actually found out that I was pregnant on a business trip. That was kind of a shock. So,
surprise. Hey guys, I'm going to need 12 weeks off in about a year.
Right. Yeah. Surprise. No, but right after we found out we were pregnant, pretty much, within a couple months, I got this diagnosis and now he's not responsible for me, but he's encumbered with all of my alarms and, whatever nonsense I'm dealing with on a bad sugar day.
Do you have concern about that?
Well, I mean, the alarms kept me up all night, every night up until birth pretty much. And now, the baby's awake in the night. My alarms are still going off. Like he gets the backlash from when I'm frustrated by sugars. Every time I'm high or super low, I feel like I'm failing, which is extra scary to me because I'm worried that my son is going to get it. That's really heavy on my brains. I've been paranoid about that since I was diagnosed.
Okay. Even
just last night, actually, my son had been drinking a lot of water and he ended up throwing up in the middle of the night, which he hasn't done. They spit up when they're young, but in terms of actually getting sick, I had never seen that from him. And I just about lost my mind last night. We were checking his sugar. He was beautiful, 72, but I find myself checking often and I'm afraid of every sickness that comes into our house because I don't want that to be what kicks it off for him. Just hyper aware.
I'm about 23 years ahead of you on my race to the grave with you, pretty far ahead of you. The best thing I could say and the thing that I have found very comforting and helpful throughout my life and raising kids and a child that has type 1 and my son has hypothyroidism, so does my daughter. I've got health issues around me. I would just tell you that worry is a waste of imagination, that you absolutely have no idea what will or won't happen in the future. And you're using up your capital now on worrying about something that might never happen and probably won't ever happen. But if it is to happen, I want you all charged up and ready to go when there's actually a fight to fight. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Right. I know that's not as easy said as done, but wait, I got that. Did I just get that back? Oh, who cares? You know what I mean?
I know what
you know what I mean. It's a saying. You all know what it means. It's, but it's absolutely true. And you will figure it out one day. So don't dilly-dally, get into it because you can't spend any time. Pre-planning and worrying are not the same things.
That is
like you know what to do, right? If this happens, I'll test his blood sugar. Other than that, you never think of it again. People get sick. There's nothing you can do about it.
That is very true.
Yeah. You are not in control of shit.
I believe that. Yeah. Goodness. I've seen that the last couple of years.
Yeah. And either am I. I hate to pile on with the make you feel bad questions, but you're not married and you got the baby And a year ago, you weren't bipolar and had type 1 diabetes. And do you worry about that? Do you ever like look at the door at 5:05 and go, he ain't coming back? Or like, like, is it, you know what I mean?
Worried that he's
going
to leave?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, yeah, the thoughts have been there for sure. I feel, like I said, I felt like I became a burden when this happened. And especially, with I never want my son to listen to this and feel like, oh man, my parents weren't expecting me or they're not happy I'm here. But
Adrienne, if this podcast is still around when Lucas is old enough to listen to the podcast, I am going to be such a successful podcaster that he'll just be thrilled that he was mentioned on my amazing show that's been running for 30 years. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Plan for that. Plan for it.
Okay.
I believe it. The thought has been there. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of this is not what he signed up for.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how somebody wouldn't think that. Like, not that you're like actually thinking this guy's going to bail on me, but I mean, like,
what's the appeal to staying for him?
Well, I'm assuming he loves you. That's not my point. My point is, like, from your perspective, why would you not wonder about that? Like, that's not worrying. That to me seems like, okay. Well, I could see how this could end up happening. Now, once I've thought it through, I would voice it to him, and then I wouldn't worry about it again.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing you can do is in your heart, hold out even 10% of an idea that, like, there's going to be another shoe that's going to drop. And then because I think it stops you from being completely present in your relationship if you're worried the person's always going to leave you. That's all.
Absolutely.
No,
you're right.
23 years ahead of you.
Well, I won't have long to catch up to you.
Oh, no, yeah. You and I should be dying right around the same time, according to him. So
right on your tail, Scott.
I'm very thin now, so I'm going to live forever.
Excellent. Yes.
I'll probably drop dead next year. And people are going, oh, remember when he said he was thin? He was going to live forever.
Too many chalupas.
I've never, I don't do the Taco Bell.
It's good for you.
I don't get it.
You shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get the whole thing.
You have it out there, right?
There's one up the street from my house somewhere. I live in a fancy place. No, I mean, I could be at a Taco Bell in 5 minutes if I catch one light. But I drive past it every day and I'm like, I don't understand what you people are doing in there. So
good for you. Good for you.
I really don't. It's like
sometimes you just need something greasy and awful.
Yeah, I don't have that feeling. Greasy makes me feel unpleasant in my belly.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So anyway, all right, what are we going to do, Adrienne? We got all of our problems laid out in front of us. We're doing pretty well with the diabetes. You're learning the algorithm. We're going to get rid of some of those lows so you can, sleep through the night, stop those alarms from going off. But what about the rest of it? How are you managing? I mean, you said they put you on some sort of antidepressant, but did you stay on it?
Well, I'm on something different now. So I was on the antidepressant through the pregnancy and then through breastfeeding, because that's, what has been studied to be safe for nursing women. But since then, they have put me on a different medication that's sometimes used to treat bipolar II, but it's actually a seizure medication. So I'm at the therapeutic dose of that. And some days I feel like it helps. Some days I don't. So I really don't know if that's the meds or if it's just a better day, if that makes sense. Still navigating. And my last appointment I had with the psychiatrist, I was actually really low blood sugar wise and just was pretty worthless for actually making any headway during the appointment. So that kind of put things on pause. So I'll meet with her again in another month or so.
You're seeing her about every month?
In another month or so. Yeah, we don't meet every month.
Okay.
It's actually kind of hard to get in with her. There's a shortage of mental health professionals.
I keep hearing that. Yeah. I think COVID might have done that.
Yeah, I believe
it gave everybody a reason to need one and enough time to figure out how to do it. So it's a problem. Wow, I can't believe that's as frequently as you can get in.
It's pretty crazy. And it's worse, I guess, now with OBGYNs out here. People are talking about not being able to get in to see anybody, that they're calling until October or November, which is obviously not an option if you're pregnant now, so I feel really grateful.
Stop being pregnant until you can get here in October. That's interesting. Where do you live, in the woods or something?
I live in Western Washington. So I'm on, the west side of the Puget Sound.
Oh my God, you're freaking Canada in the ocean. I hear what you're saying.
Pretty much.
Yeah, you're stuck. You better learn how to be an OB on your own. You think you'd ever have another kid?
Right now, no. I think we're good. I've got my hands
full. This is fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
You've seen that picture of the dog sitting in the burning room. This is fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
no one worry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny when my son was in like kindergarten, he had this principal, and I used to joke that she was a great politician because if you came to her and said the building's on fire and the kids can't get out, she'd be like, don't worry about it. We've seen this before. We'll take care of it. Like, you know, she's like on that level. She passed away last week, and I thought, she couldn't stop that one.
Oh, no.
Let's hear her spin this.
Oh, my gosh.
No, I'm just teasing. She's a lovely woman. What a eulogy.
Would you speak at my funeral, Scott, when I die early?
Sure. I'll never forget the day I met Adrienne. Holy Jesus, what a mess.
Oh, what a mess.
Do you have a lot of hope? Like, are you hopeful about your direction? Do you feel like you're focused and have the help around you that you need to get where you want to go?
I have such a great support system. I feel really, really blessed, and I feel guilty even complaining about any of this stuff because, man, I know that there are people out there who are navigating a lot worse alone. And so I do feel like I have hope. I have got a great family in my corner.
Nice.
I'm really happy with my care team now. I have changed endocrinologists, and my endo now is actually type 1 herself, which is amazing. That has changed a lot about the way we approach care and just her understanding of where I'm at and her willingness to help me.
Mm-hmm. I
was shocked that she actually loops. I can't remember if I even said that. She loops herself. And so it was funny. I was actually trying to be covert in my my chart message to her when I was asking about switching from the Omnipod 5 to the Dash. It's like, I think I'd like to lean towards some, tighter control and, more in-depth settings or something. And I put like a winky face because I didn't know if I was supposed to talk about looping since it's not FDA approved. I didn't want that in her system. So she wrote back, she's like, do you mean that you want to loop? And I'm like, oh, well, now I feel like a weirdo for trying to be
what are you talking about?
It.
No, what are you saying?
I don't know what that is. Yeah, no, but that's been wonderful. She's amazing. And yeah, just like I said, my family's been great through all of this. My mom, especially, she lives a couple hours from me, but she has done everything she can to learn about type 1 and what's going on. I do feel like she has probably the best understanding of anybody in my family. She really dove in with me, and it's such an onslaught of new information that makes no sense in the beginning. And I probably buried her with all of my venting and complaints, but she's been great. She gets it, and I'm really grateful to have her in my corner too.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if you keep going the way you're going, you're gonna find your way to the other side of it. I mean, my wife had postpartum after she had Cole. Like, she was like completely disconnected from him for a little while.
Yeah.
In the beginning, like he looked like furniture to her. I think, like she knew, the baby, and I love the baby and all that stuff, but she felt disconnected for a while until
it's hard that.
Yeah.
That alone gives you feelings of guilt because you're supposed to feel one way about this baby that's here now, and to not have that right off the bat is really hard.
Sure.
Did she come out of it fairly quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long, and but she also had, I don't know, like I wonder too. We never were checking her thyroid back then, and I don't know that we even knew what to look for back then. But she then, after having Arden, lived with like untreated hypothyroidism for years. But I don't know if it was, what the situation was prior to that. We look back sometimes to a couple of things that happened before, and some of her symptomatic stuff matched my son's before we figured out about his hypothyroidism, which is probably Hashimoto's.
Oh, wow.
And you wonder, like, how long was something like that impacting me? And, like, how much effect does that have if your TSH is... By the way, did you ever figure out what it was in the paperwork?
I totally spaced on that until you started talking about this again. I just pulled it up. It's 0.665.
Oh, your TSH is great. Yeah. So...
They say the normal range, 0.55 to 4.78. So it's like right on the low end. And I don't know if I should push for that.
I mean, if you don't have a problem with your thyroid, that low TSH shouldn't be an issue.
Well, they said it was visibly enlarged, my thyroid.
Oh, do you maybe have hyperthyroidism?
That's what I'm thinking. So I had some nodules that they weren't concerned about when they did the last ultrasound, or thyroid ultrasound, I guess is what they do. But they didn't feel the need to explore that further. TSH is on the lower side, but the free T4 looks great. So
yeah, I mean, I would want somebody paying closer attention to it because of just some of the symptoms that come with thyroid problems.
mm-hmm.
I'm going to yank up hyperthyroid symptoms
I'm
now.
insanely sensitive to heat, like night sweats out of control, which really peaked, or I guess raised a red flag for me, because that's something pretty new. I'd say within the last couple months that has just really become a problem. And so that's why I had asked again for that thyroid panel this last week when they were doing my A1C, and we'll see what she says. I have an appointment with her in a couple days. So
let's do a hands up, yay or nay. Ready? Yes. Nervous, anxious, or irritable?
Yay. All three.
Hyperactivity. You may find it hard to stay still and have a lot of nervous energy.
Occasionally.
Mood swings.
Yay.
Difficulty sleeping.
Yay.
Feeling tired all the time.
Absolutely.
Sensitivity to heat.
Yes.
Muscle weakness.
Not so much.
You got to pee too much?
Not really, no.
Thirsty a lot?
Yes.
Itchy?
Yes.
Do you make the thin poopy, diarrhea?
Not super often, nope.
Have you had a loss of, well, I was going to say a loss of interest in sex. You found out you were pregnant on a business trip to a guy you're not married to. I bet you that got rid of your interest in sex.
We'd been together for a decent amount of time prior to that. It's not like a one night stand.
I don't care. You probably have a bat now on your side of the bed. Like, keep that thing over there. But do you have a loss of interest in sex?
I do not.
Enlarged thyroid gland, yes. Excessive sweating?
Yes.
Loose nails?
No.
Any hives?
No.
Loss of hair?
Yes.
Have you lost weight?
I fluctuate.
I
fluctuate.
I mean, I'd go find a rock solid endo to take care of this for me.
I absolutely trust my current endo. I just wonder if when she sees the actual lab results, she would think, there's no reason to pursue this. I'm hoping not. I know you said with Kelly, you just pushed it, right? Until they actually tried the meds for her.
Here's what I might say. At the moment, I have a lot of symptoms that people are telling me are bipolar II that also match thyroid issues. Let's not be treating me for something I don't have. So This thing's a lot more controllable than the other thing. Why don't we find out if this is what this is first? Because, I mean, can you imagine if you, I don't know. Again, hand to God, I almost didn't make it through high school. But can you imagine if you're being treated for bipolar II and what you have is a thyroid dysregulation?
That would be absolutely wild and a huge relief, I think.
Goddamn right. And so, especially because it all came on at once, right?
Right.
After the baby. And a lot of times, ladies' thyroids go pop, snackle, pop, crack, snackle. What am I trying to say? Crack. What am I trying to say? Pop.
Snap, crackle, pop.
I can't think of it. Crack, snapple, pop. Is that it? Holy shit. I might have bipolar too.
There you go.
And so, wait, a lot of times thyroid issues.
Crackle, pop.
Yeah, go pop after pregnancies.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, what are the odds that you got bipolar II and your thyroid exploded at the same time as you got type 1 diabetes?
That's what I'm thinking. Just a hot mess over here.
Wow.
I really would love for it to be thyroid.
I would love to be right about this. And I mean, A, for you and your happiness, sure. But I mean, B, for me, because I would look like a master diagnostician. I wouldn't be, I'd be like Dr. House, except with a podcast.
I will absolutely. Yes.
He's British, the actor.
Do you have a good accent?
No, I can't do it. But he did an American accent on the TV show, so it doesn't matter. I'm good.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed with their ability to do that.
Sometimes. I hear what you're saying. Sometimes they're okay at it. Wow, I can't remember the Rice Krispies commercial, but I know the Taco Bell one. That's interesting.
It's a sign. I think you're supposed to eat there.
I think I'm supposed to start drinking caffeine.
Yeah.
Get my brain firing a little faster. Snap, crackle, pop, right? Snap, crackle. That's exactly right. Oh, can we call the episode Snap, Crackle, Pop?
Please do.
I don't see why we couldn't, because we can't call it. So, hold on a second. By the way, a thing you did not say you wanted to do, just a thing I said out loud.
Right, let's get that out there.
Yeah, let's be clear in case your kid does end up listening to this one day. Your mom's a face-to-face lover. Don't worry about it. That's inappropriate, Adrienne. Never mind.
You are fine.
Oh, no, I figured you were cool a while ago. Don't worry about it. Well, Jesus Christ, what a mess.
What a mess.
All right, I want this fixed, and I want a report back in 6 months. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah, I will let you know about the thyroid.
Seriously. I would love to know, like, honestly, whether it's the cause of all your issues or not, it needs to be well regulated so that you can at least eliminate those possibilities. Because even people with well-regulated thyroids see ups and downs with these symptoms throughout their life.
Sure.
You know, it's not a perfect system for sure. Yeah. I don't know. I want to know more about this. Seriously, will you keep in touch for me?
Yeah, I would love that.
All right. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have?
One thing that I did mean to include that I didn't, and this I think just speaks to the importance of advocating for yourself. So I had seen all across Reddit, all throughout the podcast, the Facebook group, that the general consensus was to not trust an emergency medical setting with your type 1 care. And so...
Oh, my new series is freaking you out then.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, I had already come to that conclusion, but this was just really eye-opening. And it's been great. I love that whistleblower Coldwind series, but they totally lost my train of thought. So my OB, I had asked him, what happens with sugar control when you go in to deliver? Because they actually induced me a couple weeks early, which I guess is common with type 1 moms delivering babies. And he said, well, normally we'd put you on an insulin and glucose drip while you're there, and it would be in our care. Just kind of hit the brakes. And I was like, I really, really would feel more comfortable if I could do it myself. I'm on this pump now. Can I, as long as I'm aware and we're not doing like an emergency C-section or something, can I be the one responsible for my own blood sugar? And he said yes. When I got there to deliver, the nursing team was not aware of that. And so I didn't really bring it up at first. And then it was time for me to do a pod change. And they saw me filling my pod. Somebody came in and they're like, what's that? So it explained to her. And then she was all over me about my sugars. And I remember my mom had actually brought a Starbucks breakfast sandwich one morning. It was like the second day I was there. And I had eaten that. And the nurse had said, well, if your sugar goes above, like I think it was 110 or 120. I think it was 120. She said, I have to tell Dr. Swenson. And all right. So every time she would come in to ask me, I had been watching and my sugar was slowly creeping up and I was at like 136 and she came in and she asked me what the sugar was. And so we just this is terrible, but we lied to her. I didn't want to give up control of my sugar. And I was like, I will get it back down. And it was fine. But sugars were great. I never went over 150 anytime I was in the hospital, despite the food that they bring. Mm-hmm. And the baby arrived, no complications. He was a little over 6 pounds. His sugar was great. Couldn't have asked for a better delivery, but
congratulations. I'm glad he was good.
Thank you.
And I don't mind you lying about that. I think that's fine. I want to say this though, with deference to my wife, who's lovely and, nice of her to let me talk about her on here and stuff like that. Before my wife's thyroid issue was diagnosed and she was being medicated, I thought she was out of her mind sometimes. Like I was making plans on how to murder her, if I'm being honest. Like not legally, like I wasn't really, like hyperbolically. I mean, I would literally think like, how am I going to like explain to my kids that this is the lady I picked to make babies with? Like it was like that kind of like, woo, like all over the place. And then she got the Synthroid and it like in a week or two, it was just like all gone. I was like, oh, well, that's better. Wow. So, and it was for years. Like I really thought she was like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. There's a lot of cereal references in this one today. I don't know why exactly, but you sound like you eat some shitty food, so you're down with what I'm saying.
I do.
Like, lady rolled into the hospital with a Starbucks sandwich or something. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Eat an egg.
So, yeah. When I was there at diagnosis, I was actually sneaking food. Clearly, I had no idea what I was in for here or what I was dealing with. But yeah, it wasn't anything terrible. I had like a grocery bag that had some apples in it and some nuts. But they had already dosed me for dinner and they left me for the night. And I'm just sitting there snacking, listening to the podcast, like totally uncovered fruit, carbs. Things have changed. But
I also know a woman local to me who I definitely know wouldn't want me telling her name, but like I've said this before, like she was known throughout this town as being like, I don't want to say the word, but the really bad one, the word.
Okay.
Yeah. You know the one I'm talking about. It's got 4 letters and we don't use it very often. She, for, years, like to everybody, was just the nastiest person, and then smiling and then not. And like, it was really strange. And then one day she did an apology tour around the town and came and found everybody and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. It turns out I had like undiagnosed Hashimoto's. And, you know, and I'm doing well now, and I can only imagine how I must have been. And I apologize." Like, literally. So
that's amazing.
I'm just saying. I mean, I know you were depressed when you were a teenager, but I mean, like, go find 5 girls that weren't, and, you know, then we'll have a different conversation. I don't know. I'm super excited for you to find out.
I cannot wait to get into the endo. That makes me.
Also, Adrienne, can I say something I have no business saying?
Sure.
And I mean this with love, because I've interviewed a number of people with bipolar, and I really do. I've enjoyed every one of the conversations. I count some of them as friends, like the whole thing. You don't have the vibe.
Well, sorry.
And I know that's not technical, but there's a vibe and you don't have it.
Interesting. Okay.
So
well, that's good to know.
I want to find out.
Good. Yeah, me too. Me too.
You feel what? I cut you off. You feel?
No, I feel like I'm off my rocker a lot of the time, you know, just, and I don't know if that's just because I'm hyper aware of how I'm probably coming off to the people around me now that I have this, you know, possible diagnosis in my brain. Yeah, I don't know, but I would be.
By the way, if you have bipolar II, whatever, like, I'm not saying like try to avoid it if it's true, but I'm saying like, read out the other more obvious, easier to figure out items before you jump to, you know, that.
Absolutely.
That's all. All right. I'm going to let you go. You were terrific. I feel bad about when I said mommy is a face-to-face lover. That seemed over the line, and I'm definitely going to get a review. Listen, let me just say it right now. If you want to leave a review that said that was creepy or Adrienne didn't deserve that or whatever, blah, 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 it's fine. Just make sure you sign the review woke girl. Okay. That's all. Please. You know what? You can't screw around anymore. Like, by the way, I'm fighting back, and I think a lot of other people are too. I don't know if you notice this in culture right now, but I think the pendulum's swinging the other way. I think we're going to get back to sanity. What do you think of that?
I'm hoping so.
Yeah. Oh, it's coming. I can feel it. The wind is blowing in the right direction. I think everybody's tired of pretending they're not thinking everything they're thinking. Anyway, that's a completely different story. And hold on one second, and I will say goodbye to you. Actually, here's a thing I usually do when you're not being recorded, but for you, I'll do it when you're being recorded. Watch this. Adrienne, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Did I say anything that made you uncomfortable, or is there anything you'd like to have come out of the episode?
No. Maybe the comment.
Well, we're bleeping that all out. Don't worry.
Aside from that,
yeah. No, you understand. I went for the most bombastic mood swing thing I could think of.
Absolutely.
Right. Not that I think you're like a queen or something like that. You understand what's happening right now.
I do.
It's what? Is it a week after we recorded now?
About a week and a half, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to stifle you. So I'm going to say what I want to say at the end. Does that make that fair? But you contacted me a few days afterwards and tell people what you told me.
Yeah. So, of course, as soon as we hung up, I was kind of going through everything that we had talked about. And in my, I don't know if it was nerves for the podcast itself or not really sure what, but just thought of a bunch of things that I had meant to say, points that were pretty important to my story and at least my experience with the mental health side of things that we had discussed. And just wanted to make sure that I left the full story on the table and wasn't leaving anything out.
So I asked you a question you felt like you didn't answer fully. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. You had asked what a typical mood swing looks like. And I think that my go-to example on the spot was something about the dog tripping me as I went down the stairs, kind of setting me off and making me angry. But that just seemed like such a superficial example, I suppose, kind of a knee-jerk answer to your question. And it's a lot deeper than that. So just kind of wanted to clarify and
tell me about it.
Yeah. So I guess what I should have left in there was that I am a pretty high-strung person on a day-to-day basis. There's just kind of like a persistent, tightly wound feeling in my chest. And it's not unhappiness in any way. It's just anxiety, just kind of jittery, that type of thing. And so without any sort of aid, that's my baseline. Mm-hmm. For me, it's kind of up or down from there. And the reason I decided to kind of reach out for help in the first place was a newly developed issue with anger and sudden outbursts that I was having. So I could swing from my normal state to an absolute rage over something that seemed insignificant. Kind of what I had touched on before, something small could totally set it off. So it could be a basic miscommunication with my partner or a stubborn high blood sugar that I, hadn't been able to tackle, getting cut off on the highway, being overstimulated from a sensory point of view. Sometimes it's just looking around at things that I can't get to because, I'm fighting a toddler and trying to work full time during the day. Things that normally I would have handled with ease suddenly were becoming these 5-alarm fires that would physically affect me in the moment and then later spiral me into these unhealthy thought patterns.
Okay.
So my vision would start to wave or go dark when I would get angry. My heart would race, start sweating, all these things. And it's momentary, but it was totally overtaking me. Which was scary to look at those moments and realize that you're kind of out of control. And it could go a couple ways. Sometimes minutes later, it's gone and you just needed a minute to, kind of freak out and bam, your day's back to normal. Then you feel remorse for that anger or lack of control. It's scary to think of yourself that way. It's embarrassing the way that you act, and you get further from your family, your partner. You start to feel like a burden. And of course, you figure out how to course correct and move on from there. But then you're, kind of full of this self-loathing for being difficult. And, you just get down on yourself and wonder how long it'll be before the people around you, just kind of get fed up with it. You get tired of yourself after a while. So, it's hard when frustration over something small becomes, something that snowballs into, I can't believe I've been this way and I'm not cut out to be a parent. My son's going to hate me for acting like this. It turns into this big ordeal in your brain that really just kicks you while you're down. And on the flip side of that, sometimes you can just stay elevated. And I think one of the main differences between bipolar 1 and 2, they say, is that we don't reach that full-blown euphoric mania. So when we're in an elevated state, it's irritation or restlessness. I think another element of that I kind of saw from my past when this diagnosis was first kind of brought to my attention was that in that hypomanic state, you can have this sense of self-grandiosity. And so I was laughing, looking back, thinking about all the times that I had this great idea, like, hey, I'm going to pick up this new hobby, or I'm going to get great at this. This is the time that I'm going to make it in music. The band's really going to take off this year, that type of thing. Yeah. And I have spent loads of money on materials for new hobbies that I never gave a second look to. So there's like unopened boxes of soap making supplies and all this stuff in my garage from like 4 years ago. Because you just get on these whims of productivity and, thinking that you're going to do something great. And then it just kind of falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
A lot of times that elevated state for me is, a mode of rage cleaning. If something has irritated me, I will just jump into binge cleaning mode. So those periods are probably my most productive, but also probably the most unpleasant for my family, I would think.
Huh. What made you want to clear? I mean, because you gave an answer, right? Like nobody would have listened to your episode and been like, oh, she skirted the question. Like, so it was important to you. Actually, when I got your email, and I don't want to be flippant about this, but I got your email and I remembered at some point during the podcast going like, well, I wonder if your thyroid thing is impacting your behavior. Maybe you don't have bipolar. But when I got your email, I actually thought, oh no, she has bipolar.
Okay.
Because not every, but an overwhelming amount of people who I've interviewed who are bipolar follow up with an email telling me about the things they didn't say that they should have said.
Oh, geez.
It's very common for me. Like, so, but is there a difference? Is there like that kind of like manic, like, oh, there's so many things I didn't say, I should have said things like blah, blah, blah. Or did you just think I was trying to be honest and I didn't give an honest answer? Like that was the part I couldn't tell about you. So I'm not sold that this is what's happening yet. That's why I wanted you to speak first, actually, because I kind of wanted to see what road you went down.
No, that makes sense. And I appreciate that because like I said, in the first time that I recorded with you, I am not even 100% certain on the diagnosis. This is kind of new to me, still learning about it and, seeing what makes sense and what doesn't. When I first hung up with you, it was not so much a matter of not being honest about the story. It just was like all these things that had escaped my mind. And I had worked myself up so much for this, this chance to talk to you and to hopefully give back on a platform that has helped me so much. It was like, well, I don't want to leave holes in my story or maybe offend, other people who are in this mental health community by giving such a superficial or.
So you didn't have like a mad dash feeling that you had to correct something?
Well, I did.
Okay.
And I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I wrote to you, I think it was just within a day or so. And
it was quick.
Yeah, it was
didn't
quick,
surprise me when it came. I was like, oh, here it is.
I'm sorry, Scott. I know I'm probably the most high maintenance person you've recorded.
Oh, no. I want to say, no, not even close. I did an After Dark episode once with a lovely woman, like really lovely. And at the end of it, I made the mistake of saying, like, well, if you want to hear it first, I'll let you listen to it.
Oh, no.
And months later, she and I were involved in an editing process that I just thought, oh God, this is never going to stop. And I didn't want to let her down, but she'd get manic and then she'd want a bunch of things fixed. And then and it's interesting because everybody feels that way. There's not one person that doesn't record this podcast and later in the day think, oh, you know what I should have said. But most people just go, no, well. And then that's the end of it. Right.
Right.
But I also know I understand the feeling. Because I'm a talker and people, I hope, don't laugh at me if you're in your car. I could turn this microphone on and talk for a full day. I just could. I know I could. I would get interested in what I was talking about and dig through ideas and I know I could. But I also have the knowledge that I can do it again tomorrow. So if I'm in the middle of a conversation and I don't bring something up, I think, oh, that's no big deal. The next time it comes up, I'll say it then. Because I have that opportunity, but you don't. This was your one shot to get your story out. So I feel that too.
Definitely. And I think, first off, I don't think any of us would laugh or complain if you were to turn on the mic and just talk for a day. That would be a treat.
My family would not like that, but I appreciate you saying so. Thank you.
It was more, I guess, more of not wanting to minimize this condition, I guess, or offend the mental health community by, equating it to being annoyed with my dog for, tripping me on the stairs or something like that. I just really, that wasn't sitting well with me. And I had left out, kind of the biggest part of this whole thing, what made me seek the help to begin with was the sudden anger issues I was having. And I'm not sure how I just totally skipped over that. I think, I had indicated in my email, I just wasn't planning to spend as much time on the mental health portion of it, just because the diagnosis was so new to me and uncertain. But I really appreciate you letting me come back and clarify.
I'm super happy to do it. The one, my one reservation was oh, everybody's going to send me an email. But I forgot to say something too. And I'd be like, all right, that's enough. Stop. So, but I know I was happy to. I mean, your email's very well thought out and cogent. I read it and I was like, okay, I see what she wants to do here. That's cool. We should definitely do it. The anger thing, and I have a couple of questions about it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. So anger, I understand 0 to 100 for no reason, but then do you hang on to it later or does it dissipate?
I'm sorry for my Dexcom alarm here.
Don't be sorry.
It depends, I think, on what set me off to begin with. I can think of a couple instances just within the last probably 5 or 6 months or so. It's mostly in conversation with a partner. You have a discussion about maybe something from the past that's come up that's a little bit heated, and just the specific example, what he was saying to me was not at all what I remembered him saying before. And I'm saying, no, that's not what you told me. It's not what you told me. And eventually it's something just snaps. And that's when all these, visual disturbances start happening, and I can just feel this wave of anger coming over me. And that lasts a while. Once that initial wave kind of passes, the residual feelings of just frustration, bitterness stick around until they're replaced with that, kind of kicking yourself for, man, I was a real jerk. And, what must these people think? And I remember once, so it took me probably 3 or 4 months before I even shared this diagnosis with my partner. It was kind of a harder one for me to swallow just because I wasn't sure about it. But I remember after I had shared with him, conversation didn't really go very far. He didn't ask any questions. It was kind of like me throwing the information out there, and that's as far as it went. But a couple of weeks later, we were in, sort of a disagreement, and he had just said, I don't understand how you can flip from totally fine to flying off the handle with no prompt, basically. How does this happen to you? And that was tough to hear.
And was this not your MO prior to recently?
No, not really. And that's kind of what made me question this diagnosis to begin with, was because there's just so many big events that have happened in my life with the pregnancy, with the diabetes diagnosis. I just lost my dad 3 years ago. I was actually diagnosed the day before his birthday. But there was just a lot of large things happening in my life kind of at one time. And I thought, well, maybe it's just the stress of all that, that's changing how I'm handling things. But it was not a point in my life where I wanted to see those changes in me. It's more important now than ever to not be the person to fly off the handle. You've got a young baby in the house, and that's just no way to be. But yeah, this is new to me.
I'm going to say something that feels like it's out of left field, and
Okay.
it might be. But I've been paying attention to this and picking through it for a few months now. Have you ever heard of the MTHFR mutation?
I have not.
No. So I think it's colloquially called the motherfucker gene. I think probably just because of the acronym.
Huh?
Symptoms vary from person to person and from variant to variant. If you do a quick internet search, you'll likely find many websites claiming the MTHFR directly causes a number of conditions. Keep in mind the research around it and its effects is evolving. Evidence linking most of these health conditions to the gene, or currently lacking, has been disproven. So it's one of those things that, like, it might just be a bro science thing. Okay. Like,
Sure.
I really don't know. But they say that something like 60% of us can't have this problem where we can't, I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly even, we can't methylate folate. We can't I forget exactly how the wording is, but that, not being able to absorb folate leads to cardiovascular problems, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, colon cancer, leukemia, chronic pain, fatigue, nerve pain, migraines, reoccurring miscarriages in women of childbearing age, pregnancies with normal tube defects like spina bifida. And so the way it's treated is you just take a methylated vitamin that your body can pick up, this folate, right? I am just like, I don't know. I'm so enamored by the idea of it. And I'm trying to pick through it a little bit because it can have other impacts too, like digestion issues and other stuff like that. And so many of autoimmune issues, they have such similar, symptoms.
Right.
And I know that I could be 1,000,000% off. Like, Adrienne, seriously, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. All I am is a person who has like 1,000, of conversations with people. If I've recorded 1,100 podcasts and each of them are about an hour long, I've talked to people for a really long time and picked through their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people talk about depression, anxiety, bipolar on a type 1 podcast. Like it comes up a lot. Chronic pain, fatigue, people talk about migraines, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if Jesus, is it just something like this simple? You know? And so anyway, I bought a bunch of vitamins and I'm spreading them out amongst a few people who I think might fit the bill a little bit. And we're just going to kind of see. Now you can actually get tested for it. It's like, yeah, you can get, like, there's places online, you can get the test for like $89. And, you could also have your doctor look at, I'm going to use the wrong word. I'm going to look closely so I can see, because you can ask your primary care physician to order the MTHFR blood test for you. Although most insurance companies don't cover it, that type of gene test, it may leave you with a bill. There are places online that offer them, but there's this one thing they can test for. God, I'm going to botch this. I should have been ready to talk about this, although I didn't know it was going to come up actually. Does 23andMe tell me if you have it? Oh, if you already have purchased 23andMe test kit, you can log in to see your MTHFR status by downloading your raw genetic data. Now, that's a thing where I heard 23andMe stopped giving people access to their raw genetic data.
Really?
So I'm not sure if that's still, I don't know if I have an account. Hold on a second. Yeah, apparently I don't have an account. As an added security measure, we're requiring that all customers choose a new password unique to 23andMe. Reset your password. I go, well, this is fun to do on a podcast. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can get through this pretty quickly. Send reset email. We've sent your email. It's not here. Oh, there it is. Reset. That's pretty quick.
I'm not sure you've been asked this, but do you ever consider voice acting?
Oh.
Or did you?
Adrienne, listen to me. Did you hear the Dewdrop Diaries episode?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, gentleman comes on, right? And he's the producer of a Netflix like animated series. Mm-hmm. And he was really great. I enjoyed talking to him. Actually, it's very interesting. His daughter is named Arden and she has type 1 diabetes.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of weird similarities, right? So, wait, I got to put in my username. And I said something, I don't know, somebody online said to him, like, you should let Scott do a voice on the show. And he goes, well, if we get a second season, we will. And then he got a second season. I did not hear back from him.
Oh, no.
It's okay. He
got to bang down that door.
I don't know what I would do with all that.
That is so funny.
Yeah, but it does sound fun, I have to admit.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Just totally let loose.
All right. So the problem when I use this password, other options, choose my own password. There. I don't mind when Apple like suggests like a 97-digit password, but sometimes it doesn't save it in the and then I don't know what the hell it is afterwards. Wait, my new password's not long enough? All right, we're not doing this now.
Sorry to derail you.
No. Yeah,
I am interested
myself.
In that mutation, though.
Yeah, me too. So I just wish that. Sorry. 2, 3. I'm trying to make up another password real quick. I haven't made up a password in so long. I didn't know how to do it anymore. The machine does it for you now. When I grew up, not so.
Uphill both ways in the snow.
Oh my God, for sure. All right, I changed the password. Now enter your verification code. Holy Christ. All right, hold on a second. Jesus. Please remember me. I don't want to do this again. Watch, I'll get in there and I don't have an account or something. Oh, I do have an account. Okay, now, how do I get to raw genetic data? Hold on a second. I got to Google that, right? Raw genetic data. 23andMe. Can I get raw data from 23andMe? You can access your raw genetic data in the 23andMe account using the browse raw data feature. You can view. Well, where the hell is that at? How come I don't just see that? What a tease this was. Hold on a second. Now I feel like I have to come through. Family tree, view all DNA relatives, surveys and studies, edit answers, publications, research overview, health traits, my health and action plan. What the hell? What are your DNA book, DNA relatives? I did this because I'm adopted. And I thought like one day, like obviously somebody's going to pop up that I'm like, oh my God, look, I'm how close. It never happens. Like the closest it's gotten is a second cousin.
If any family is something, my partner's actually adopted also. He did Ancestry.com and was able to find some grandparents.
Oh.
Yeah, his uncle and his mom.
No
but
kidding.
We've not reached out to anyone yet.
I actually found a second cousin who is Facebook friends with a friend of mine's daughter.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding. Is that just because of regional locale?
I have no idea. I reached out and I was like, would you mind like bridging a gap here? And she's like, I'm not comfortable with that. I was like, okay.
Wow.
So
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's okay. How in the hell view my profile? Yeah, that's me. This sucks. Traits, wellness, view all wellness reports. Can you search that? You can search it. Hold on a second. I'm going to type in the MTHFR in search. Your raw genotype data. Oh, look at that. That was pretty easy. Search button, kids. It works. All right. Browse your genodata's raw, uninterrupted format, your A's, your T's, your G's, your C's. You can search your specific genes, markers, positions of interest. Well, there's a ton of this MTHFR. How am I supposed to know what any of this means? This is an advanced view. Yeah, no shit. Marker, assembly, position, variance, your genotype. I'm clicking. Welcome to the reference report. I feel like I'm on that ride in the original Jurassic Park all the time when stuff like this happens. And then they're like, hey, have you remember when the thing was talking to them? Variant details. there's a lot of data here that I don't, and I'm not going to understand. Splice donor region variants.
So on 23andMe's blog, they say that the short answer is no, they do not test for mutations in the MTFHR gene. It says that they include more than a dozen variants on their reports, but they don't have a report that specifically tests for mutations, whatever that means.
Oh, the internet's let us down again.
I'm sorry for the...
No, don't be sorry. It's not your fault.
Goose chase.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll take this part out. Who knows? But I'm going to find out more about it. Like, I think I'm going to get the testing done. Like, so, because I was talking to a person the other day and we were like Googling around a little bit. And the next thing you know, we were talking about Ehlers-Danlos, and there seems to be a connection there, perhaps. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I have a bunch of information saved, and I have a note to myself to do an episode about it. So I'm gonna try and see what happens.
Be great.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Like, listen, is that the answer? Probably not. But the idea that you're an $89 test on the internet away from finding out that you can't process, folate properly, and you just need a vitamin. You know what I mean? Like, that's
right. That could be the missing piece for some people.
I hate that idea. Like that. I know it's not going to be for most people, but like, I hate that it is for somebody, and we're just all sitting around and not doing anything about it. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, that makes total sense.
It's the way I feel when people don't take their thyroid medication correctly, or they don't use enough insulin. I'm like, oh my God, there's just this tiny little thing to do, and you'd be so much better off. And you don't know about it, but I do. Like, I wish there was a way to get to those people all the time. Anyway, I'm going to figure out this out, and then I'm going to talk about it on the podcast at some point. But
yeah, excited to hear what you learn.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Unless maybe you're going to, who knows? You can yell at somebody, and they're going to you're going to end up in jail. Don't yell at anybody too loud, okay?
No, I'll try.
You're the most conscientious person about their mental health that I've ever spoken to so far.
Oh, well, thanks. I feel like you have no choice but to be now, because you're just, I think we talked about this last time we spoke, but just afraid to step on any toes. You never know who you might offend.
There's something about the way you approach this and the diagnosis that don't go together for me. And I can't. Yeah. And that's very colloquial. I obviously don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but it just feels weird to me somehow. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It makes sense, because I feel the same way. And I, like I said, don't ever want to write this off or
of course,
belittle it in any way. It's an important thing. And I know a lot of people really struggle.
Oh, of course. No, yes. I agree. I'm just talking about between you and what I know of you so far. Anyway, if I figure something else about this, I'll let you know.
Please do. Okay. And then just to kind of close the loop, I had an appointment with my endo a couple of days after I last spoke with you. And I had told you I was going to run the thyroid stuff by her. And we had done some lab work prior to that appointment. And what she saw, she wasn't really concerned with. She said she would keep monitoring, but right now she didn't think thyroid would be behind any of this. So
what was your TSH in the testing?
I think it was like 0.661 or something like that.
Yeah, that seems very good. So
yeah.
I'm sorry. It would have been nice if it was an easy answer.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Keep working. But like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time to let me come back on and clarify.
It was my pleasure. I'm glad you took the time. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Take care, Scott.
You too. Hold on one second for me. If you're ready to try America's most loved food delivery service, just check out hungryroot.com/juicebox. Plans start as low as $69 per week. You can skip a week or cancel at any time. hungryroot.com/juicebox. The conversation you just heard was sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Check them out, please, at touchedbytype1.org on Instagram and Facebook. You're going to love them. I love them. They're helping so many people at touchedbytype1.org. Jalen is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and look out online for the hashtag Medtronic Champion. Okay, well, here we are at the end of the episode. You're still with me? Thank you. I really do appreciate that. What else could you do for me? Why don't you tell a friend about the show or leave a 5-star review? Maybe you could make sure you're following or subscribed in your podcast app. Go to YouTube and follow me, or Instagram, TikTok. Oh gosh, here's one. Make sure you're following the podcast in the private Facebook group as well as the public Facebook page. You don't want to miss, please. Do you not know about the private group? You have to join the private group. As of this recording, it has 51,000 members in it. They're active, talking about diabetes. Whatever you need to know, there's a conversation happening in there right now. And I'm there all the time. Tag me. I'll say hi. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.